In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Adorable Will, I want to pray these titles, but I am unable to do it. Come and do it with me, and I'll do everything well. Jesus and Mary, I thank you and I esteem you. One with Luisa, one who feels vividly the force, the union, the order, the inseparability of all created things, and the race of her whole being toward her Creator. Luisa, one who holds her place of honor as she was created by God. Luisa, one who the triune God finds in the Son. Luisa, one who the triune God finds in the heavens. Luisa, one who the triune God finds in the sea, together with the union of all created things. Luisa, whose soul rings the bell, as though roll call to all the works come out of the divine Fiat. Luisa, whose palpitating life the triune God feels in their works. Luisa, whose love the triune God feels flowing within their love, and the purpose of creation realized. Jesus and Mary, I esteem you and I honor you, one with Luisa, who finds a divine will in her power. Luisa, she who has given life in her acts to the divine Fiat, who the triune God defends and supports. Luisa, little newborn in the triune God's arms. Luisa, who gives the divine will the field to form its life in her acts. Luisa, a single act of supreme will. Luisa, the soul in whom the beatitudes of heaven pour themselves. Luisa, who forms a single will with heaven. Luisa, one for whom everything is meritorious. Luisa, creature in whom Jesus is happy. Luisa, creature in whom Jesus hears the echo of his day spent on earth. Luisa, creature in whom Jesus hears the echo of his day that he does in his prison in the sacrament of love. Luisa, one who closes the outlets of the human will. Luisa, possessor of the triune God's divine possessions. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, the dear apple of the divine Fiat's eye. Luisa, the soul who encloses in her little act the powerful and immense act of her Creator. Luisa, the soul who renders herself so striking and artful that it is an enchantment to see her. Luisa, the triune God's field of action. Luisa, the triune God's continuous work. Luisa, tiny little girl who at night looks for Jesus, who she loves, to draw new strength and new love in order to love him more. Luisa, inside whom Jesus stays. Luisa, whose acts serve Jesus as lullabies, refreshment, defense, and sweet relief for his ardors of love. Luisa, pilgrim soul. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Luisa, where the triune God can form the divine life and can carry out their fulfilled act. Luisa, who does everything and even from earth belong to the family of her celestial Father. Luisa, the creature who flings herself into the center of God's supreme being. Luisa, who the supreme being identifies with themselves. Luisa, who the supreme being pours their knowledges upon making her share in their divine being. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter of his will. Luisa, chosen as center of all creation for the great good of making known with more clarity what it means to do the divine will. Luisa, from whom Jesus cannot unbind himself. Luisa, in whose love Jesus has trust. Luisa, in whose sacrifices Jesus has trust. Luisa, in whom Jesus had trust to accomplish his designs. Luisa, creature who, dominated by the divine will, forms a people for the kingdom of God. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter. Luisa, creature with whom God continues the work of creation. Jesus and Mary, I honor you and I cherish you, one with Luisa, creature who calls the triune God to work. Luisa, creature who calls and recognizes the triune God. Luisa, creature who calls and opens the doors to the triune God. Luisa, creature who calls and gives the triune God dominion. Luisa, creature who calls and gives the triune God all the freedom to do what they want in her soul. Luisa, daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, whose company in Jesus' acts are dear to him. Luisa, whose company in Jesus' acts render the work sweet. Luisa, whose company in Jesus' acts empties the work of its weight. Luisa, whose company in Jesus' acts is the bearer of new joys. Luisa, who gives fulfillment to the acts established by the Supreme Being. Luisa, who recognizes the divine will in all her acts and receives its operative act. Luisa, one who recognizes the divine will. Luisa, one who loves the divine will. Luisa, one who esteems the divine will. Luisa, one who appreciates the divine will. Luisa, little and just newly born. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter of his will. Luisa, whose acts are a correspondence that she opens between heaven and earth, and a game in which she calls her Creator to be with her. Luisa, one who is beautiful. Luisa, one who is striking. Luisa, whose every act contains the variety of the divine seeds that is note of her Creator. Luisa, in whom the finger of God is operating with an order of divine harmony. Luisa, she who reproduces her Creator and hosts within herself He who created her. Luisa, in the dwelling of the divine will, at her place of honor. Luisa, to whom sanctity, light, strength, love are not lacking. Luisa, creature at whose disposal is whatever she wants to take from within the divine source. Luisa, who lives in the abundance of all goods. Luisa, whose acts spin the divine engine to let it operate. Luisa, who was given the virtue of moving the whole of God's divine being. Luisa, one who murmurs in God's divine being with the life of her acts. Luisa, one who is in the divine will and operates out of pure love for the divine being. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, beloved daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, who lives in the divine will and recognizes its paternity. Luisa, who recognizes herself as a birth from He who, with so much love, generated her and delivered her to the light. Luisa, one who tears the veils of God's power and finds that her Creator powerfully loves her and draws her with His power to make Himself powerfully loved. Luisa, one who finds the sacrarium of the divine power and fears no more. Jesus and Mary, I cherish you and I love you, one with Luisa, one who loves with powerful love and tears the veil of the divine wisdom. Luisa, one who loves with powerful love and tears the veil of the divine goodness. Luisa, one who loves with powerful love and tears the veil of the divine mercy. Luisa, one who loves with powerful love and tears the veil of the divine love. Luisa, one who loves with powerful love and tears the veil of the divine justice. Luisa, who feels the reflections of her Creator, loves Him wisely, with goodness and tenderness, united to mercy, that she turns for the good of all generations. Luisa, fortunate creature who sees her God, not veiled, but as He is in Himself. Luisa, happy creature who the divine will is all eyes over. Luisa, who the divine will gives its bath of light. Luisa, happy creature who is invested by the beautiful rainbow of the divine colors that render her so graceful, striking, and beautiful that God Himself feels enraptured by a beauty so rare. Luisa, daughter who is never alone in her acts. She has the celestial Mama together with her, who surrounds her and nourishes her act with her light of her virtues to give it life. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter of his will. Luisa, creature carried in the arms of the triune God's immensity, and everything inside and outside of her is solidity and insurmountable strength. Luisa, in whose depth of soul the triune God finds the divine sacrarium. Luisa, in whose depth of soul the triune God finds the hearth that always burns and is never extinguished. Luisa, in whose depth of soul the triune God finds the light that forms the divine and perennial day. Luisa, who from the center of her soul gives the triune God divine acts. Luisa, who from the center of her soul gives the triune God divine honors. Luisa, who from the center of her soul gives the triune God divine prayers and love that possess invincible strength and insurmountable love. Luisa, one who wants to do God's will, for who the doors of heaven are open. Luisa, daughter of the triune God's will, who their paternal knees adapt to take into their arms, to let her rest in their loving bosom. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Luisa, whose acts are formed in the center of the divine will's life, in God's divine being. Luisa, with whom Jesus renews what he did in the creation of the first creature. Luisa, one who brings her life to the triune God. Luisa, who sacrifices her human freedom and takes the divine freedom. Luisa, who as life lives in the triune God's fields and sees without boundaries. Luisa, who lives in the divine fields and is like Jesus. Luisa, who lives in the divine fields and can imitate Jesus' sweet, harmonious, powerful voice as to shake heaven and earth. Luisa, who lives in the divine fields and possesses such strength as to capture Jesus into her works, to make him operate together with her. Luisa, who has the right to be like the triune God in everything, as much as is possible for a creature. Luisa, the triune God's daughter. Luisa, the triune God's glory of their creative work. Luisa, the longed for one of her celestial Father. Luisa, a soul who will form the new hierarchy of the celestial fatherland. Luisa, Jesus' beloved, who he wants together with him in the womb of his light, of his will. Luisa, whose company Jesus wants, that she may recognize the great portent of the creation of souls, God's excessive love. Luisa, in whom Jesus wants to deposit souls, entrust them to her, not leaving them alone while they journey as pilgrims through the earth. Having someone together with Jesus who would protect them and defend them for Jesus. Jesus and Mary, I love you and glory to my Creator, one with Luisa, one whose company is sweet, who takes care of the lives that come out of Jesus. Luisa, depository of the creation of souls. Luisa, the channel by which Jesus lets souls come out to the light, and channel to let them re-enter into the celestial fatherland. Luisa, one to whom Jesus wants to give everything that he does. Luisa, one whose company is necessary to Jesus' love, his outpourings, and to his works. Luisa, dearest daughter. Luisa, in whose operating Jesus feels being given to him and repeated for him the paradise that his mama gave him when she received him, a little baby, into her arms. Luisa, who makes arise and forms the sweet and beautiful hope that the divine will's kingdom will come upon earth. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Luisa, one who will remove for the triune God the sorrow and soothe their loving delirium. Luisa, one who has the divine will as life. Luisa, the one creature alone with who Jesus deals about the divine will. Luisa, in whom Jesus forms the first kingdom. Luisa, like sun, such that all have the right to enjoy and possess its light. Luisa, more than sun, who gives to all creatures the right to possess a kingdom so holy. Luisa, the creature animated by the rainbow of the triune God's divine colors. Luisa, creature whose sweet enchantment enraptures the triune God and makes them the spectator of their acts. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter of his will. Luisa, daughter who is spectator and enjoys scenes so admirable of the will that created her. Luisa, blessed daughter who it is necessary for to go around in the divine will's divine properties. Luisa, whose love is imprinted in the height of the heavens. Luisa, whose love is imprinted in the light of the sun. Luisa, who gives the triune God the heavens as pledge. Luisa, who gives the triune God the stars as advance. Luisa, who gives the triune God the sun as commitment. Luisa, in whose hands the triune God places their works as divine currency. Luisa, who has a particle of the infinite love of God. Luisa, who places the infinite in attitude with her love. Luisa, who places as commitment the Queen of Heaven, Jesus' very life and all his acts. Luisa, in whose soul Jesus made the capital of his divine will. Luisa, creature who the triune God dealt with, so that the good from her may pass on to another. Luisa, little shelf on which to form the triune God's greatest works. Luisa, blessed daughter. Luisa, dominator of herself, of her acts, of the very divine will. Luisa, winner of the triune God's divine will in her acts. Luisa, the soul who receives the act of the divine will's creative word. Luisa, fortunate creature who possesses the divine will's sweet and happy dominion, in who it places many heavens, seas of riches, varieties of beauty. Luisa, the triune God's only feast and happiness on earth. Jesus and Mary, I glorify you and I praise you, one with Luisa, the soul who lets herself be possessed by the dominion of the supreme will. Luisa, in whose soul the divine will has formed its cathedra in order to deposit its truths. Luisa, secondary custodian of the divine will's truths. Luisa, who will bring with her into the celestial fatherland the little visits of Jesus as triumph of his will and as guarantee that its kingdom will come upon earth, and has established the beginning of its reigning. Luisa, blessed daughter. Luisa, one who touches with her own hand the triune God's creating act. Luisa, creature under the reign of the triune God's new acts. Luisa, whose life is nourished with new sanctity, new goodness, new love. Luisa, fortunate pilgrim soul, who lives in the divine will, who is always in act of making new conquests. Luisa, like the flower that remains in the plant. Luisa, who the triune God must give a place in their house. Luisa, one who prepares the prevenient grace for the human generations to make it known to them. Luisa, whose every act forms the step in order to ascend. First herself, then the creatures, to the knowledges of the supreme Fiat. Luisa, who the divine will gives the maternal virtues. Luisa, who the divine will gives the office of performing before God and before creatures, the office of true Mama. Luisa, whose acts form a long staircase that must touch heaven. Luisa, the one creature that made the staircase, to lay the field, to let others ascend. Luisa, who was given the office of mother, loving the creatures as her own children. Luisa, who accepted the mandate and spared neither toils nor sacrifices, and even her own life for love of these children. Luisa, whose soul the divine volition endowed with maternal love, making her feel these children in her own heart. Luisa, who the divine volition gives divine and human tenderness in order to conquer God and the creature and unite them together to make her do his divine will. Luisa, whose maternity is bearer of generation. Luisa, who the triune God gives the grace to form their beloved people. Luisa, in whom the divine will forms its support of love, of light in order to enclose its truth. Luisa, in whom the divine will placed new love. Luisa, in whom the divine will formed the new support for its truths and put them in the safe bank of its divine love. Luisa, little daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, creature who enraptures the triune God continuously to herself. Luisa, blessed daughter whose race in the divine will is beautiful. Luisa, the little atom who the triune God can raise as they want. Luisa, one who feels within herself the power, the virtue, the miraculous strength of an act that never ceases. Luisa, raised by the triune God. Luisa, who runs with the triune God. Luisa, who forms many bonds in the divine will. Luisa, who the divine will expands its seas around. Luisa, whose acts are placed on the scale of divine value. Luisa, the little daughter. Jesus and Mary, I praise you and I thank you. One with Luisa, blessed daughter of Jesus' volition. Luisa, one who forms the company of the triune God's works. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, the little daughter of Jesus' will, who, together with Jesus, cries out in all acts for the divine will to reign in the midst of creatures. Luisa, the supplier and repairer to obtain that the divine will come to reign in the midst of the generations. Luisa, who waits from the celestial fatherland for creatures to take the wealth, the capital, the kingdom of the supreme Fiat. Luisa, who laid down her own life and sacrificed her will, sacrificed with continuous acts in Jesus. Luisa, Jesus' daughter, born and reborn in his will. Luisa, the little newborn of Jesus' will. Luisa, fortunate creature placed in the first act of her creation. Luisa, who feels her beginning in God, the creative, vivifying and preserving virtue of his omnipotent breath. Luisa, the creature who renders back to God the first act of life that she received from him, the act of God himself. Luisa, protector of the acts done for her by her Creator, the Redeemer, and by all the saints. Luisa, protector of the sun, the heavens, and all creation. Luisa, protector of Jesus' terrestrial life, his pains, his tears. Luisa, protector of the acts of the saints. Luisa, who laid down her own life and sacrificed her will, sacrificed with continuous acts in Jesus. Luisa, the creature whom all God's works, creation, redemption, and all that the saints have done, protect. Luisa, whose round in God's works, the virtues and the acts of all is necessary and serves to prepare the kingdom of the divine will. Luisa, one who enters into the divine will and takes her place in the order of creation. Luisa, whose race in the divine will have the purpose that the kingdom will be formed. Luisa, Jesus' dear prisoner, who he shackled and bound. Luisa, prisoner with Jesus, and together they prepare the kingdom of the divine will. Luisa, the celestial Mama's daughter, whose acts are like her Mama's, that double the right for creatures to receive the kingdom of the divine will. Luisa, the soul who enters the divine will and converts into light. Luisa, the soul whose acts are vivified and animated by light. Luisa, the soul who gives divine light to her Creator. Luisa, the soul who gives divine light to herself, and it descends even into the depths of the creatures. Luisa, who forms the most beautiful flowerings, all invested with light. Luisa, the soul who lives in the divine will's light, in who it repeats its beloved creation. Luisa, in whose soul the divine will forms, the creation all speaking. Luisa, of whose works the sun speaks. Luisa, of whose thoughts the sea speaks. Luisa, of whose words the wind speaks. Luisa, whose treading of her steps leaves the virtues of its flowers. Luisa, everything she does speaks like brilliant stars. Luisa, one who Jesus cannot leave. Luisa, who forms within herself the royal palace in which to receive the divine will. Luisa, who acquires the love to love the divine will. Jesus and Mary, I thank you and I esteem you, one with Luisa, who acquires the qualities of sacrifice that are needed in order to possess the divine will. Luisa, whose human will disposed itself to receive the dominion of the supreme volition. Luisa, to whom Jesus manifested so many knowledges about his will. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, who lets herself be subdued by the divine will's dominion. Luisa, who lives as daughter. Luisa, daughter constituted heiress of the joys of her divine mother. Luisa, daughter constituted heiress of the beauties of her divine mother. Luisa, daughter constituted heiress of the goods of her divine mother. Luisa, creature who grows continuously in sanctity, fed by the divine will, and raised together with it.
You have reached the end of day 26 of the Titles of Luisa. Fiat.